2030 webinar. I'm Amin Al-Pathak, and I know many of you and many of you know me, but just a quick intro. I work with the Global Center for Environment and Energy at Ahmedabad University, and I also work with the technical support unit of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And to be very honest, this is also a rare occasion for me. I do chair a lot of events and webinars and teach classes, but I never do it with such an interdisciplinary audience. And I have this great panel here, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm very, very excited. And just for all of you, a quick intro to today's event. It's part of a larger initiative, um, well spearheaded by the Bard College in New York, but I think my colleague Shaurya will tell us a little bit more. But I think at this moment and during this week, we have about 80 or 100 institutions conducting such an event globally. So we are very excited to be among I think we are the only institution in India. But so this video is going to be recorded and used as a climate class for future teachers. So I'm going to pass it to my colleague Shaurya Patel, who is a research assistant with our center, and he's very sincere, committed, and active. And he's the one who's driven us a lot to reach out to the wider audience. So Shaurya, over to you, please.
Thank you, ma'am. So the webinar is hosted under Solve Climate by 2030. The center is part of the collaboration led by Bard College USA and the Open Society University Network. There are over more than 125 universities currently participating right now in this particular project, where it ranges from US to India to South Africa. There are lots of universities. The whole idea of making this webinar is to have it as a tool for students and educators to understand the climate change based on the region's interest area. Now I'm going to play a 5-minute introductory video to explore more about the event.
Welcome to the Solve Climate Global Dialogues. You're participating in one of 125 events held across the planet, including in almost all 50 US states, part of a global project called Solve Climate by 2030. My name is Eben Goodstein, and I'm an economist and director of the Graduate Programs in Sustainability at Bard College in New York, the lead organizer for Solve Climate. This last year has been difficult for everyone. As the world looks forward to recovery from COVID, we are focusing tonight on the most important question facing humanity. What can we do in this year in our regions to help solve climate change while supporting struggling communities that have faced widespread loss of life, economic disaster, and joblessness? Worldwide, from Australia to Kyrgyzstan, from Colombia to Malaysia, and from South Carolina to South Africa, Solve Climate audiences are hearing from local experts and young leaders about concrete steps that can really help nations solve climate change while creating much needed jobs and incomes for everybody. The year 2020 was one of the 2 hottest years in human history, bringing with it massive forest and grassland fires, record-breaking storms and hurricanes, and relentless rising seas. Solving climate is the challenge which the human species must now face. There's hope for the future. Solutions have continued to advance. This year, China committed to building a carbon-neutral economy, while the US rejoined the Paris Agreement. Solar, wind, and battery prices continue to fall, while major car companies have been rushing to electrify the global fleet. Worldwide, movements for Black Lives Matter and Me Too are leading in bringing much delayed and urgently needed justice to the world. Time is short. We have until 2030, 10 years to solve climate. We can get a lot done in this decade. We have the solutions, but only if we focus the world on climate solutions and justice, and then do the work we have to do in our own cities and regions. For students listening, you are the leaders. Without you, the future we envision will not come. I'm asking tonight for your help. We're going to discover powerful ideas for climate solutions and climate justice and how you can be a part of the solution. But this message must reach beyond those of us who are listening right now. Would you ask all your teachers this week in every subject to make climate a class? The teacher can assign tonight's webinar as homework for the students and then afterwards have a one-class period discussion. And we mean every subject, from art to engineering, psychology to business, dance to chemistry. Teachers don't need to be a climate expert to lead a discussion about climate change. The Solve Climate Project has easy-to-use teacher's guides in nearly every subject and in 3 languages to help teachers make climate relevant to their class. It only takes courage. Don't take no for an answer. Ask them, why not? This is your future. You'll be surprised how many teachers will say yes and thank you. Imagine you, thousands of leaders like you around the world asking their teachers once every school term to make climate a class. That means every term going forward, hundreds of thousands, millions of students worldwide in their classes talking about climate solutions. COVID has shown how fragile our global economy and society are to extreme events. It's also shown that vulnerable people are facing the hardest, most damaging impacts. This is also true with climate change. Science has made it clear that unchecked, global warming will mean an unending onslaught of extreme events, causing untold suffering for humanity and all creatures, species driven to extinction, a planet of environmental refugees. And yet, in many ways, this is the most exciting time to ever be alive as a human. We have the tools and networks and technologies to rewire the world with clean energy, reimagine the global food system, reinvent transportation, and regenerate forests and grasslands, and be well on our way to solving climate by 2030. Tonight, we will learn how to do this in our own cities, our own towns, our own regions. Thank you for the work you will do to promote climate solutions and a just world.
Now I'll hand over to Meenal.
Thank you so much, Shaurya. What a powerful message that was. And we don't want this to be a regular webinar where people are passive. So we hope to have an engaging conversation this hour. But first, let me introduce this fantastic panel I have here. And I will start with the youngest, Bhuvana Venkatesh. Bhuvana is a 10th grader. She studies in Bengaluru. And Bhuvana loves Indian history, mythology, English literature, music, and theater. She's passionate about preserving the environment and living sustainably. She plays the veena, writes poetry, and short stories. She wants to become a doctor and a writer in future. Welcome to the webinar, Bhuvana, and we are very excited to have you. Our second panelist is Bijal Vachrajani. Many of you may already know her. And when Bijal's not writing a children's book, when she's not reading a children's book, she's writing or editing one. Her books include A Cloud Called Pura, which won the Author Children's Book Award. She's written a book called So You Want to Know About the Environment. And her latest, which I really love, Bijal, is called P.S. What's Up With the Climate. And just to let the audience know, these are written for very, very young children. They're beautiful illustrations, and please get a copy if you haven't already. She was a former editor of the Time Out Bengaluru, and she has worked with 350.org, Fair Trade, and Sanctuary Asia. She is a senior editor at Pratham Books and holds a master's in environment, security, and peace from the University for Peace. She says she calls herself a certified climate warrior. Our panelist, Raj Shah, is a bright MBA student at Ahmedabad University. He was my student in the climate change class and asked me a lot of difficult questions, so I thought, why not have him at the panel? He has a keen interest in exploring business and climate change intersection, and he has interned at several institutes. He has participated in community service and is vocal about business taking action on climate change. We were expecting Parth Shastri from Times of India, but he's got a personal issue today. A very close family member is in hospital, so we are very sorry that Parth will not be able to join us today. This is the speakers officially on the on the poster, but we have some very interesting participants here, and they include faculty members at Ahmedabad University, doctoral students, people from NGOs. We have Shwetal Bhai from the State Government Climate Change Department, Gujarat. And yeah, I look forward to your fantastic engagement. But this is supposed to be a conversation and I shouldn't be the one talking. So what I'll do here is I will introduce maybe my own perspective in the next 5 minutes and then pass it over in a Q&A format with the panelists. But we want to hear also from you. We have about an hour, so we'll try to wrap up our internal conversation, maybe 30, 35 minutes, and then pass it over to discuss with the audience on what you think about climate change messaging. So I'm going to share a few slides here. So as you know, I work with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Can you see my slides? Can someone confirm if you can see my slides?
Yeah, ma'am, we can see.
Okay, so just to give some context, this is a draft of a report that will be published next year. This is half of the report. I think it's 1/3. And Shreya, my colleague, is here too from the IPCC. And this will be published next year. It's got all the latest assessment on climate change. Now my question is, how are we going to get this messaging out? And I talked to a lot of people, people around on how they feel about climate change. And sometimes it appears as a non-issue to many. And I've pulled out some different kinds of communication that I have come across. Cartoons or illustrations are now becoming very popular. The one on the right is my favorite. This is about the US audience and what they think about climate change. And it was a perception study. And this Joe Moore put this up as an illustration. There was one about the global politics of climate change between the rich countries and the poor countries. You can see this is as old as 1991. And cartoons can be very effective in drawing public attention to climate change. Recently, there have been a lot of art forms. These are paintings of migrants, of the climate migration crisis. Some of them came out post-COVID when you know the sad story of Indian migrants where several thousand, I would say, people had to walk to their hometowns because of the lockdowns. There are some very interesting songs. I don't know if you've heard the Love Song to the Earth, but if you haven't, please do. And yeah, they're very interesting and they draw attention better than I suppose my reports do. Olafur Eliasson, I think she's a Danish artist, Danish Icelandic, I would say. She has taken these pieces of glaciers across outside the waters near Greenland, and these have become installations in and around London for people to see and feel and experience what climate change is like. It's been a very popular installation in London. Some of you may have seen Hula and Kapu. They are twins, and they have these murals. This one's of this woman drowning, and they are massive installations that have received a lot of attention recently. Very interestingly, all these wonderful books. The one on the left is Bijal's book, so I will let her talk about it later. But there's a ton of interesting stuff about climate change. There are powerful photos. The one on the left talks about coal jobs. The one on the right is a forest fire image, and we saw several from California and Australia, and now very recently also India. The climate march in New York, big, left a big impact, right? There were thousands of people on the streets in Manhattan and so many places in the world, led by Greta. It was a moving experience just to be there and feel the energy, the anger. These are more kinds of communication that I'm more comfortable with, that we use graphics in our reports to indicate the warming climate. This one's about 2050 and the large cities that will be extremely hot and unlivable. We've tried getting people engaged with graphics about the world that will be in 2100 and how different. This one's about the world in 2080 and how your actions today can influence the shape of the planet then. But like I said, I'm not going to take too long. I'll stop here. The challenge I'm facing as a scientist or as a policy researcher is how do we, I mean, are our messages effective enough? How do we reach out better to different audiences? How do we reach out better to younger audiences? Are they even listening? Do people even care? I was talking to someone yesterday about how climate change is not even an election issue. And so really, this talk was earlier going to be on climate action, but I think communication is now becoming as important a climate action as any other. So I'm going to actually turn to my first panelist, Bhuvana. And Bhuvana, so your generation will face the reality of a changing climate in your lifetime. In my lifetime too, but it might be more severe in yours. You're the most vulnerable and potentially the best placed, probably even the best motivated to generate an ambitious response. So how do you, like, what do you feel about climate change? Do you think about this on a day-to-day basis? And what happens like when you see news and media reports about climate change? So tell us a little bit more about yourself and your moods and emotions when you hear about climate change. Bhuvana? If you're mute, you will have to unmute Bhuvana. Is she on the call?
Yeah, ma'am, she's on the call. I think she's unmute. Huh.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So speaking for other teenagers, other students my age, I would say that we are very concerned about climate change. We see it as an issue that needs to be combated, that needs to be on our priority list. But I also have to say for us that we do not really know what's happening. We know about climate change, we know the phenomenon behind it, but we don't know how much of a footprint we're leaving. We don't know how disastrous the consequences can be. And I think if we were better educated about this, we would really be able to help a lot. We don't really think about this on a day-to-day basis because, as I said, we don't receive much news about it, nor do we know about the consequences, how bad they can be and how they can affect our lives and change them so dramatically. So I would say, yes, we are concerned, but if we receive the right information, if we receive the right tools, then we can be a great help.
Thank you so much, Bhuvana, for your short and very concise response. We may have follow-up questions for you, but like just taking up from the points that you just mentioned, you know, if we knew a little bit more, if we were told this differently, we would probably feel differently about it. So I turn actually to Bijal. Bijal, you've been writing children's books addressing climate change and environment. So tell me your story, you know, and taking from Bhuvana's point about how do we better communicate to very young audiences. And it's such a depressing story in a way, you know, climate change. How do we stay optimistic and inspire climate action?
Well, firstly, Bhuvana, I just want to tell you I'm taking copious notes, and at some point I'm hoping that they will turn up into my writing. So thank you. Everything you talk is going to be fodder for all of us.
Thank you.
So, well, I started my work, I worked with Sanctuary Asia, but I actually started my work in climate with 350.org. I was coordinating 10-10-10, which was this call to action on 10th October 2010. And also this big art project called 350 Earth. And I was in Delhi, I was standing in this huge football field with hundreds of children. We had formed this giant elephant to kind of say that climate change is the elephant in the room, which nobody's talking about. The elephant could be seen from space. We had nobody in India write about that. And while standing there, surrounded by children talking animatedly about climate change was really exhilarating for me. I realized I needed to learn more about climate change. It's like what Bhuvna said, don't know exactly what it is. It's this intangible thing everyone talks about. So, which is why I actually went to study it from a peace perspective. And the more I studied, I felt the answer was with children. One, because they're the most vulnerable to the crisis. And the second is because my work with Sanctuary, with PETA, with 350 constantly shows me one thing, that children care deeply. So my writing actually comes from that space of wanting to have more conversations with this generation that's going to inherit the earth. And I feel fortunate that all my books have actually led to some amazing conversations with my readers. I go to classrooms where children they can totally give their own climate sessions like these. They'll tell you everything about what's happening in India, what's happening in the polar regions. But at the same time, I've been to like international schools and government schools where no one's even heard the word climate change. Everyone will tell me, you know how the weather changes? That's climate change. And I listen to all of that with a lot of sinking heart, because, I just feel like, no, we need to do something. We need to accelerate this education at the right away. And which is what, when I'm in a classroom, actual or virtual with children, I get more and more determined that these stories need to be told and shared and read. So yeah, I actually, going to your question about optimism, I'm not optimistic. I must tell you that right at the start. But every time I'm in a classroom, I come away with optimism. And I feel that books in that sense are, are a good way to spark curiosity, whether it's nonfiction where you're getting the facts, the actual stories, what is happening, or whether it's fiction which kind of breaks it down in a more more easier way to understand, to relate to in some ways. So yeah, I feel like it's so important to be talking to children at this point of time more than any time in our history.
Thanks so much, Bijal. It sounded optimistic though. um, I'm going to actually, taking cue from this, I'm going to talk to somebody who is not really in the very young age group, but still young enough. Well, definitely young, much younger than me. I'll turn to Raj. Raj, you were in my MBA class on climate change. And I've had mixed feelings about this teaching in this MBA course. While some of you are extremely engaged and some of you, well, not that much. And you don't think this is mainstream conversation for future business leaders. And we know there's a lot of literature now coming in on we can't reach the global targets without contribution from business. So how do you what would you say about the relevance of climate change for future business leaders and professionals? And probably what are your suggestions for teachers? Like how do we improve our messaging?
Yeah, so why I was so much into it was I come from a business background family. So I have seen business since while growing. So what I have seen is climate change affects everything that businesses do, and the impact they create, the effect they create is so much tangible that businesses need to look at climate change very closely. But the thing is that small and medium scale businesses haven't been looking at businesses both ways, how companies affect the environment and how environment affects the companies.
Thanks, Raj. What would you say about
Just a second, I thought I was stuck. Yeah, so so I feel this, the future business leaders should be more aware about this concept of climate literacy, wherein I know that this awareness is very slow, but I feel that even if there's this thing which gets mass awareness, slowly and gradually, it will not only entice businesses, but compel businesses to change. And being a future business leader, we have to consider public opinion, because with time going, what I have felt is, like previously, the businesses only used to work for profits and shareholders' motive. But now public opinions do matter for businesses. So the brand image of the businesses do change with public opinion. So for a proactive business leader, all these fronts of climate change do make a huge impact. And if he or she is able to look at this, then they'll are able to avoid brand damage and build a sustainable future proof brand. So I feel that businesses and future leaders should look at this as a business problem and not a CSR activity, that the climate change is a CSR activity. And I feel if they look it as a business problem and solve this as a business problem, then companies have can change these vulnerabilities into opportunities, business opportunities. So I feel with growing time, pondering upon and working on climate change is not just the job of a philanthropist, but more of a business strategist. Strategist as in increasing the operational efficiency of the company. I understand that every company might not have the same set of rules, but strategy as in not just having a person appointed by the HR department into the company and who is just looking at the operational efficiency, but there should be deeper integration so the climate change becomes for real, like having a strategist in each department, production, marketing. So, and they can improve the operational efficiency of the company, which can in turn make the company more sustainable and future ready brand. Here I feel that government also plays an important role, because without good governance, it is not possible to have such sustainable companies, because without good governance, there's not going to be compliance. And if we look at the second question, ma'am, that you said, like, what would be a suggestion to the teachers? Like, as a management student, why we enjoyed your class was there were more discussions around actionable plans and points. So we were not just discussing the issue. Being a student, as Bhuvna also pointed out, we are just less aware about the issue. But as management students, we also need to look at the side of action plan. Like, discussing an issue is a part and solving it is another part. So it is very important to know the action plan. Like we did the exercise of exchanging of credits, calculating carbon footprints. So that gives an idea, like what more needs to be understood. Yes.
Thanks so much, Raj. I mean, you should be teaching my course, I guess, because it sounds more impactful coming from someone who's doing an MBA rather than someone like me. Because, yeah, I just felt that it wasn't engaged, like the audience wasn't engaging as well as I would have liked it to. But I'm going to turn back to Bhuvana, and also I would like to point out that it doesn't have to be an internal conversation. Just raise your hand, and I'll be very happy to bring you in if you have a question for any of the panelists or a comment. But just turning back to Bhuvana, you said that, well, if we were told this differently, or if the messaging came across in a more impactful way, then maybe a lot of the young people would be concerned. But I feel just that, well, you are among the engaged ones. I know a couple of your friends who are on this call, but there's a lot of young people who aren't really engaging that much with environmental issues. And what do you think I, as a climate scientist or an educator, or Bijal as a writer, how would you say, what's the best way that we can effectively communicate the urgency? I mean, Raj made an important point, but Raj, we don't have 50 years. The time window has shrunk significantly. It's the urgency. So how do we, Bhuvana, I'm looking to you, how do we communicate the urgency to younger people?
So I think I can safely say this, that we are a generation which is addicted to social media. Many of us do not read non-fiction, so fiction books are a great way for us to learn about climate change, but the best way I would say would be social media. A lot of us spend hours on social media every single day, and there are plenty of influencers out there whom we look up to, whom we admire and we follow. So the best way I feel would be to convey the messages to us through social media, through art, through fiction, and through music. Sources like these are things which we interact with on a very regular basis. So this interaction can be made very productive for us, because then we would learn about climate change and we would learn how we can actually combat this issue and how we can make a difference. And I think that this needs to be brought into schools as well, because as I said, we only learn about it as a phenomenon. We don't learn about how we can reduce the footprint we're creating every single day. So if we get some tangible method in which we can, reduce our footprint, in which we can be more conscious as a person who's trying to reduce climate change, I feel social media, art, and the classroom are the best solutions we have.
Thanks, Pulvera. I have some of my very bright interns here, Ayush and Rudradat and Dhey and Anurag and Kriti. So many of you, I'm so happy that you're here because you pretty much know this stuff. And maybe you guys should come together and develop a footprinting tool, maybe with Raj's help on how we can better calculate and just spread it around on social media, but just using that as a solution. So Bijal, do you have any take on what Bhuvna just said? Like, how useful has social media been for you?
I hear Bhuvna on this because definitely social media is where it's not just where the cool kids are, it's where all the kids are. It's also where all the adults are. My family is constantly on Facebook and WhatsApp, and the younger ones are on Instagram or some other social, or Snapchat when it was much more popular. So I kind of feel like we've got to start realizing that the medium is part of the message now, and use these as effective tools to communicate. If Reels is what is going to take to talk to children, to young adults about climate change, we do it. Like that David Attenborough film, the moment you mainstream that conversation, the moment it was on Netflix, suddenly everyone's talking about climate change. I don't know if they're doing anything, but they're definitely talking about it. I had so many people who came and said that film really scared me, and I said I didn't find it very frightening. And that's when I realized that a lot of people don't realize the implications that this is not just happening to polar bears and penguins, it's happening to you. And the messaging has to change for that on social media, on films, on movies, that it's not just about the others, it's about you as well. Because I mean, that's when, I mean, the pandemic has shown that we can change things when we want, when we need to. And the climate crisis is definitely bigger. And yeah, so who wants to come up with the next music album about climate change? Bring it on.
Yeah, well, I don't know much about music, but I'll be very happy to listen to these interesting mediums. But yeah, the medium is part of the message, and that's why I decided that it's not going to be about climate action, because if I was going to have a webinar about climate action, we'd talk about the blah blah of energy efficiency and efficient air conditioning, etc. Those are important, I agree, but it's really the core message of the urgency that we need to communicate. I already have a ton of questions on the side, and I'm going to actually turn to Rudradat. Rudradat, do you want to speak your question that you sent me on chat? Rudradat is a student with LT Engineering College, an undergraduate engineering student. Red for somehow stumbled upon, and they as well, they stumbled upon our IPCC report, and they searched us in Ahmedabad and came to my office, 6 boys, and I almost thought they were coming to beat me up. And they said they just got so interested in climate science, and now they've applied to climate modeling programs in the United States, and I hope make a glowing career. But really, Rudradat, did you want to come in on your question?
Yeah. So what I have observed is that some of the images or graphics, or when you talk about social media, it is targeting a particular group of people. And what I think is they are basically a little bit aware of what is climate change. So how can we target someone who is completely unaware of climate change issue, who comes from a very different class of people? So someone who is from a very poor financial background, climate change is affecting them the most, but they won't like that much easily be engaged in a reel or in a video which is focusing on climate change. So how can we focus on those community and those people?
That's actually a very difficult question that you asked. And yesterday, I remember I was talking to this Times of India reporter, and he was asking me a question similarly framed. He was asking me, what do people who don't have access to air conditioners do about heat? And I said, it's not the people who don't have, they're not supposed to find the solution. We are supposed to find the solution for them. So turning it back really to the audience and saying, yes, but they haven't created the problem. They are in fact the victims of the problem. So we have to find the solution. We have to make sure that those voices are represented in our conversations, in our policies, in our infrastructure decisions. My colleague Darshini is not here, but she would be very vocal about how climate action in cities just fail to completely ignore people living in slums and vulnerable populations. How do we take that? There's a lot of NGOs doing some great work, but I would agree with you, there's not enough. There's not enough. And it links to actually Anurag's question earlier. And Anurag is saying why parents are not encouraging children to have careers in climate change. It's seen as this big thing, but if you talk about parents advising their children, they will go for the more conventional careers, Like Bhuvana wants to become a doctor, not an environmental scientist. Why Bhuvana? but this thing about like which young person in this audience, so I'm looking at Ayush and Priti and all the people I know for a while now. Why is it not attractive enough to go out there? Or Raj, maybe, why is it not attractive for an MBA student to go out there in the villages and work with these issues? Because it doesn't pay, I guess. But Raj, I'm going to transfer Anurag's question to you. Why aren't younger people taking up careers in environmental or managing sustainability?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the point being that you said it is not lucrative enough, maybe. And the other point is like in the whole education system, what I feel is students are not enough climate sensitized. Like if we have, so in school, we are engaged in sports, but we are not engaged in any climate actions or anything of that sort. So even if schools had 1 hour of climate class, so that could make a difference. So from a very young age, the focus is shifted from climate is what I feel. So we go to field visits, but we don't go to field visits where we can feel climate change. So if we go to a thermal power plant or some solar panel area, we could see that okay, this effect is created by the climate change. So if education system is changed a bit in that way, and education not only looks at theories, but and the track of field visit is changed to climate changes, then this could make a difference is what I feel.
Easier said than done. I have actually a bunch of comments from all these young people, and the chat is on fire. The sad part is that it's only being sent to me. So can I ask people to please put this to everyone and not just to me. Sorry about the earlier notice. We were worried about Zoom bombing. But I wanted actually to turn to a faculty colleague here, Professor Ravi. And I don't know, Professor Ravi, if you can hear us and if you're on. But I was talking about climate change previously, and he brought up this very important point, saying it's okay, but climate change just doesn't do it. Like he says, climate change is too mild. You need something stronger. And so, Professor Ravi, what's your take on the communication jargon or language? You're mute. Oh, you're not able to unmute. Can somebody help, please? Can someone unmute Professor Ravi?
Yeah,
ma'am, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an outlier in this group. I have no knowledge of climate science, so don't take me too seriously. But my view was, which I had mentioned in an earlier session to Meenal, and in the spirit of recycling that you climate wallahs like, I'm recycling my comments again here. The comment was that it's to some extent, and nothing in climate changes will be fixed by one thing, but to some extent, it's a branding issue. and I come from the world of marketing and branding. Climate change as a brand name, and it is a brand name, is not motivating enough for people to take action. It may have been a good brand name 30 or 40 years ago. It's no longer, because we have always taught that change is good, adopt change, change is the only constant, be the change, that change is good. And now we suddenly are told change is not good. So climate change is not good, all other change is good. It's just confusing. So we need to find a more kind of scary brand name, like climate calamity or climate catastrophe. The reason I'm mentioning these two is then IPCC doesn't need to change its logo. It can still be IPCC. If they don't have the budget to change their logo, they can just be international or whatever, intergovernmental panel on climate calamity. So that was, I know it is somewhat of a frivolous comment, but I think a lot of things in the world are branding issues, and if we brand it well, it will probably make a difference. And one other comment, which I don't know whether I'm recycling from the last one or not, was that while action at ground level, at grassroots level is important, what ends up happening very often, for no fault of anyone else, but by making it into hashtags and social media trending posts and reels, people think, okay, ho gaya. I've done my bit. I've stopped using plastic straws. I'm using paper straws. I've done my bit. Climate change solved. And that is the worry. Climate change is not solved by stopping using plastic straws and other such symbolic things. Symbols are important, but that's not even a drop in the ocean. Okay, I'll stop there.
No, point well taken. Your message on branding is absolutely well taken. I was teaching this group of writers at the University of Chicago last month, and they were all poets and writers. So it was very scary for me to go out there and talk to them. And they were telling me that that all this stuff, graphs and charts about science, just don't resonate with us. We just need to do it differently. And they reminded me of a poem, and the poem talked about climate change with reference to a baby's temperature. So they said, when you talk about 1.5 degrees increase in a baby's temperature, it's worrisome. But for the earth and those graphs and charts, they don't make sense. So how, yeah, well, branding is great, but the problem is we're not having too many of these conversations. So when I go back, I'll continue to do what I'm doing and work with my numbers and models. And Tana here will continue to teach her courses, and Sonal will continue to teach her courses, and Raj will go back to his assignments, and Bhuvana will probably go back to reading Shakespeare. And how do we also sustain this? But first I'm going to turn to Bhuvana. There's also a question for Bijal, but let me turn to Bhuvana first, and then to Bhushan for your question to Bijal. So Bhuvana, there is a comment from one of my PhD students, Chaitali. She's an architect, and she's right now down with COVID. So I'm surprised, Chaitali, that you made it, but I'm very happy to see you here. And she says that maybe we should have more board games and activities that help reach the younger audience. So if you were at a store, do you think it would be popular? Would children buy those board games, or it would just be lying in a corner? You're mute, Bhuvana.
I think that's actually a great idea for to make games about climate change. I think that's a brilliant idea, because since we already have a basic idea of what's going on and that it needs to be fixed, I think a game would really help. And then I think when you're in a game, you slip into the skin of the character you're playing, or the part you're essaying in the game. So I think it would really help to actually understand what would happen and what the consequences would be when you're actually in a situation like that. And if it's a situation where say the climate has gone so bad that it's impossible to even live normally as we're doing right now. So I think that would really change our perspective and give us a reality check kind of about how bad the situation can get. So I think that's a great idea.
Oh, thanks for picking that up, because all the games I see are around capitalism. We used to have Monopoly, which was so popular. And then we have the Catan, where you have to acquire land and develop it with ore and make houses and buildings. And well, anyway, there is a question from Bhushan to Bijal. So Bhushan, I'll let you ask this question, but I want to introduce Bhushan, who has been working on climate change for longer than I have, I think. And he's now a PhD student and his research is on climate change communication. So over to you, Bhushan. What's your expert take on this conversation? And your question to Bijal, of course. Are you not able to unmute? Can someone please help him?
Yes, got it now. Yes, thank you, Minal. And yes, Bijal, I just wanted to ask, why not use the web series or movies as a medium to communicate climate change, as that being a stronger mass communication medium? What are the factors that are stopping it from being used?
You know, that's a great question, Bhushan. And I mean, okay, this is very awkward to say, but recently there's a production house that actually showed interest in my book, which is about climate change. It's a climate adventure in Mumbai. And so they've got the screen rights for that to turn into whatever they want, web series, animation, whatever. But for that, you need writing. You need good writing that talks about climate in a way that's entertaining, that's mainstream. Which goes back to the fact that we've got to get more writers to care about writing about the environment, but also to understand writing about the environment. It's only when you know intrinsically what it means to be part of a climate crisis is when you're going to be able to put that into narratives, which is what Amitav Ghosh's biggest grouse was in The Great Derangement, that we failed as a culture to look at climate change as something that should be written about, that's outside the environment in that sense. So yeah, we need to train a battalion of people who can write, enact, produce all of that, and we need to do it literally now, because films take a lot of time to produce.
Thanks. Bhushan, did you have any follow-up comment on that? Okay. I have a very interesting conversation from a young person here, Kavya. So Kavya, it's a good question, yes, and I would like you to please turn on your video and ask.
Okay, so I would like to ask, for us to educate children about climate change, the educators themselves must know the actual consequences of climate change. So having teachers who don't feel strongly about climate change won't make any impact on the students. So the question really is, how do we change the mindset of the people who are still living in the generation where climate change is not a problem?
Thanks, Kavya. And just to introduce Kavya, she's the young person in my house, my 14-year-old daughter, who is already sensitized to the issue. But Bhuvana, I mean, this is her frustration, and I wonder if you share this as someone within the same age group. I mean, you are sensitized about climate change, but the adults around you aren't. And do you bring this up to your teachers?
Yeah, well, yes, we do. We do find this a great issue in my school. Also, we have talked about this quite a lot. When the people who are teaching us themselves don't feel it a need to convey to us that this is an issue, and they just simply teach us the science behind it, then I don't think the people they teach will, actually understand that such a big issue it is, and that it needs to be combated right now. So I think the best way they can be taught about this is, again, social media is a great thing. And I think adults read more books than we do, more nonfiction books anyways, and they read the news more frequently than we do. So more news about the environmental crisis we are going through, and more news about how we can fix it, and solutions which we can implement better, and how we can reduce our footprint. If it's told to the teachers, our educators first, and then when they convey it to us, I think that's going to make a better impact on us. So yes.
Yeah, thanks both. I face this question a lot when I talk to school children. They said, oh, but ma'am, they already know this. And it's really the adults who are locked into our patterns of development. It's like really we are barking at the wrong tree. We don't really have to educate the younger children. They have to educate us. And I guess they're like many of them are already struggling with how to do that. But we haven't found a great solution, Puvana and Kavya, so we hope you will be able to help us. I'm actually turning to, yeah, I'm just flooded with chat questions. So if anyone wants to jump in, just raise your hand. But I will read the question from Khata, and I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. How do you think younger audience will help with climate change if an engineering degree or a basic educational degree is necessity, even to be heard for changes we need to make? Well, Kata, I kind of disagree with you. I wouldn't think that a degree is necessary. I have like a fancy degree. I have a PhD in environmental science. I don't get listened to. Nobody reads my papers and reports. And I have Shwetal Pai here. Shwetal Pai, I hope you're listening to us, and I would like to hear the policymakers' view. Shwetal Pai is a rare policymaker. He works with the state government climate change department, but he reads research papers and he comments on them and he co-authors them. But you don't have many, right? So Khata, I don't think a degree is necessary. If you want to make a change, you just have to do it. Yeah, do it in a different way, because I'm doing it with a degree. Trust me, it's not easy.
Can I just add to that? I feel like one of the things is that whatever degree you have today is getting impacted by climate change. If you're a doctor, you're seeing more patients because of climate change. If you're an engineer, you're going to be building. I really don't exactly know what all engineers do. So I'm just going to, like, if you're an architect, you're going to be building climate resilient houses. If you're going to be, if you're in insurance, if you're in banking, you're going to get hit by climate change, and that's why a lot of money is being poured into it. So today, I think the question is like, how do I would turn it around a little bit to say that how do I use my degree to make sure that climate communication is happening through my work in some ways?
Well said, Bijal. Yeah, I could add a ton of examples to yours, but I think, yeah, the core message is clear. It touches upon everything you are doing and everything you will do in the future, everything you will own, everything you will not own, everything that you will do but not be able to do is all linked to the changing climate. And I hope I don't sound like a doomsday warrior, but sometimes it's just so hard to stay optimistic. But 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 coming back, there's a technical question here from Priyank Joshi. Priyank, did you want to read your question?
Hello.
Oh, Shwetal Bhai, of course. Shwetal?
Yeah. Interesting.
Please turn on your video also.
Yeah, I have some internet issue. So I'll speak only.
Okay.
So interesting conversation, Minal Madam, today you have carried out with these young people mostly. So as you rightly said, climate change is not particularly a subject, it's a phenomena, and it is a cross-cutting issue across the various sectors of the economy and all say important social sectors as well. So we require expertise from every stream of science, engineering, and humanity to understand the climate change and to resolve the climate crisis. At the same time, the climate change impacts are some are visible and some are slow onset events, which are not easily visible. For example, there is sea level rise, there is salinity ingress, ocean acidification, glacier melting. So these are some of the continuous long-term process that is happening. At the same time, some catastrophic events are coming all of a sudden and doing a big disaster and then going away. So everything is required to make understand to the students and the stakeholders so that they can really get engaged to those phenomena which are happening globally. So this scientific information is also required to be communicated in a as simple as possible way in different languages and different communication modes, including already discussed like games and stories and poems and etc. Cartoons, uh, some visual with visual pictorial representation, etc. So this how we can communicate to every age group and every stakeholder group, because not only young kids but even elderly people do not understand exactly how climate change is happening and how it is impacting to the sector in which they are maybe having livelihood from, or uh, which are important for them. So all these slow onset events are also required to be communicated with a wall understanding of details of those climate change impacts. So climate change is just not limited to global warming, but there are n number of things which are associated with and which have bigger, larger consequences. And at the same time, also we can talk about the solutions and what one can do personally from his or own lifestyle, and choosing the type of resources, uh, or having a better choice of efficient things than the say conventional versions. So these are the things. So both adaptation and mitigation can then be balanced in such communication.
Shweta, I actually, while we have you on the call, and I don't want to put you on a spot, but you work with the state government, you work with the babus, so to say, right? And and is it like, do you also face communication challenges with your seniors and with people in power? And are there occasions when you wish action was, let's say, more rapid than what it is, and the processes hold it up? And how do you face? I mean, how do you deal with these challenges?
No, it is really difficult many times, because even there are figures coming out are also very say mismatching. Like if you see the absolute number of milk production or agriculture yield, it is increasing year over year. At the same time, we are saying that climate change is having impact on all these sectors, but because of the use of say extra chemicals and fertilizers, etc., still that equilibrium has not say reached in which we can absolutely see the climate change impacts on those areas. So these are challenging to make them understand and make them say that this is a serious challenge and we require to work right now, not in future. But sometime policymakers are not convinced enough uh, and say that we'll work on these areas maybe little in little future, so that we can have some pilot projects and some results in between for us to understand. But at the same time, the use of renewable energy and the like you popularizing LED bulb, etc., has been very successful in our state. And similarly, we are also pushing for electric vehicles. So things really take its own time, but it is also moving in positive direction. So that is also there. So it is not that nothing is happening or only it's a negative problem and issue, but solutions are also coming up very rapidly. And the way battery technology and electric vehicles and things are coming up, we can really see that by 2030 it will be a significant change in our say emission scenario.
Thanks, Shwetal. There's like a flood of questions here, and I don't think we will be having the time to take all this. But I did promise Priyank will come to him. So Priyank, first to you, and then maybe I'll go to Supratim's question. Priyank, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I hope most of you have read the chat box. I'm a school teacher and I teach in secondary class. So I don't know whether you'll be able to. I don't know whether I'm going out of the loop when I'll be discussing this topic with you. So a few days back, I was asked, like before the schools were shut down. Uh, like I was asked to conduct a revision class for grade 10th class. And like we were discussing about the chapters and all of those things. And then stepping ahead, I just asked them what career are they going to pursue. So so I asked them. So some of them said that I wanted to be an engineer, I wanted to be a doctor, which was all fair enough. I asked them, like, are you even planning to take arts or humanities? And one of the students were like, ऐसा कौन सा option होता है? Humanities, arts, वो क्या होता है? And I was totally, you know, like blank. Like, what are they even talking about? They don't even consider this as an option. So talking about, you know, introducing climate change into our curriculum, what I feel, it's a huge step. But what I feel that it should always begin from home. Like all of these things, like when it comes to thoughts and all, it also depends upon how we nurture our brothers, our sisters, or our fellow mates, our friends. So what I feel, talking about like beginning it from the curriculum or from school, it should always begin from home.
Thanks, Priyank. I cannot agree more with you. But as a teacher, I mean, I also face some of the issues that you do, and you just have to find ways to overcome these. And the question really is for this webinar also, and for the audience to take home, it's not just about how to communicate. So Shwetal I talked about how to communicate climate change um, and the different impacts. But now we are at a stage where the science is known. It's the communication of the urgency that we struggle with. How do we convince the stakeholders that the action has to happen now? We don't have the luxury of, let's say, 5 or 10 years, or say like a few electric buses or a few LED bulbs, using your example. But I know you're doing your bit, but it's just that how do we make deeper and faster action? And Kriti has got a passionate plea here that it's just the promises, and when they realize what's going through, it's just something we have to face, because we just be too late. And somebody else on this chat earlier also said that, can we still do something, or is it too little too late? And I never say that it's ever too little too late. I think, and now I'm speaking with the scientists hat, that the IPCC and all the research we're doing um, we have evidence to show that it is still possible to take action. We have a portfolio of options at all levels, and not urban, as somebody rightly pointed out, also rural, but across sectors, across supply, across demand. And somebody raised the question of food waste and plastic waste and energy consumption. All of these are relevant. The problem is that there isn't a single solution. You just have to do everything. And also, wearing the scientist hat, I'd like to say that if we don't do anything now, we are going to be faced with a future where we have to rely on very expensive technologies to solve the problem. Like you have big filters sucking in CO2, or massive forest plantations where it's going to be very expensive. We don't have the resources, we don't have the land, and the consequences of inaction are expensive and steep. Um, Priyank, you had a question. You're mute. We can't hear you, Priyank. Okay, I think there is a problem. I can see you, Priyank, but I cannot hear you. Can you unmute? Okay, I can't find your question also. But there's, Priyank, can you hear me? Okay, so yeah.
Ayush has raised his hand.
Yeah, we'll just pass it on to Ayush then. Ayush?
Ayush, you're on mute.
There's something wrong with people's audios today. I think Bhuvana is also facing some internet issues.
Yes.
But, okay.
Can you hear me, guys?
We can hear you, Ayush, yes.
So I want to answer like 2 or 3, like there are many questions that were asked before during this whole conversation. So I would just like to point out a few answers that I have seen from my point of view. So the first thing is until we get a successful unicorn from India that focuses on climate change, you know, we will हम नहीं देख पाएंगे ऐसे parents who will focus their children to do some degree on climate change. So like you need to show them an example. So you know, if like there is Byju's, right? So once you see Byju's become a unicorn, then the edtech sector of India, like it rose like exponentially. So if we bring a startup or some new venture that focuses on climate change and make it a big successful startup, then I think people might follow it and unko support bhi mil payega from their parents, from their peers, to do something on climate change, like to do their work that focuses on climate change. And for another part where regarding the school, I mean, should the climate change and the education sector, so usme, I think, you know, we need to award, like we need to bring the schools or the education institutes that start studying students from a very early age. हमें उन लोगों को, you know, we should bring them in limelight, क्योंकि only then other people will be motivated. See, they are doing it, they are getting limelight, we should do it too. So I think we live in a world of instant gratification, जहाँ पे, you know, no one is ready to see a long-term goal. Everyone wants an instant gratification, and climate change being a thing that you can't see or feel instantly, people are not following it at all. So until we put something that is, you know, that can show people immediate results, like, oh, he did something on climate change, now he's earning millions, we should also do it something on climate change. Or wow, this professor worked on climate change, he got this governmental award, I think we should also do it. So I think, yeah, that's how we can bring climate change into action. Else there is no way I mean I can see climate change coming into big picture.
Thanks, Ayush. I like it that you're smiling while giving this very complex message. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm taking notes, and it'll be great. I'm going to actually. There's 2 more questions, and we have the last 5 minutes. This session has flown by faster than any of my sessions ever have. I'm going to take the last question, I think, and then I'm going to turn to the speakers for their final remarks. I'm sorry we couldn't take all the questions, but I'll take it from Sonal Yadav. Sonal, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah,
great.
Thank you, Minal. Very interesting and wonderful conversation happening. So I have just a small thought. So if I don't know how many of you are aware of this. So when India was facing a problem of hunger and agriculture crisis during 1965, Lal Bahadur Shastri appealed the nation to observe fast for a day. So he began with his own family, telling them observe one day fast. so that, we can combat this problem of, hunger and shortage of food grains, because at that time we used to import. So is it possible that, this can be a nationwide movement, and everyone, thinks that, okay, once in a month, we must not use vehicle, or we must save 1 bucket of water, or we must not waste food, something like that. So if it becomes a global movement, I think some impact would happen. As we all know, Sustainable Development Goal 13 also talks about, climate action, and we need to achieve it by 2030, and we don't have, much time. So, I think we must think seriously. This is just, my wilder thought and idea that I thought to put before you. Thank you. You are muted.
No idea is wild enough, and we just need all the ideas on the table. And Kriti says, there's another person also who's talked about food waste, and I don't know if it were a physical session, I would ask for a show of hands. How many people are willing to fast? Did you say once a week? Once a week? Fast once a week, and maybe I would add fast once a week, a no car day once a week, a no air conditioning day once a week, and maybe a lot of other positive things. And maybe demand is one of the solutions, but just to put it like a little more in perspective, we also need supply solutions, and the overemphasis on demands lets the governments and businesses get away saying that, okay, it's about people and their behavior, but it's not only about people and their behavior. We do need to make the large scale changes, but yes, small scale changes at a large scale, like you said, would be definitely welcome. We might just go over time very quickly. Kriti is saying that we put a large clock on the main street and remind people of the time that left till climate change becomes irreversible. So nice, Kriti. If there are artists in this group, it would be nice to put that clock up there. I have the next 2 minutes, which is obviously not going to be enough, but I wanted to turn to at least the 3 speakers and have their last thoughts on the session. Was it useful? Was it not? Just your final thoughts. So Bhuvana first, please.
I have to say this was a very productive session, because apart from my ideas, I have learned so much from people who are way more experienced and knowledgeable than me. I think there were some really interesting points mentioned here, like instant gratification, working on that, and how if everyone makes a small change, it would help our cause so much, because this requires a major lifestyle change. I think we can all accept that to make a difference, we all need to make a major lifestyle change. But if everyone makes even one small change, it's going to help a lot. So I think all of us trying to change little things, like, for example, using an ink pen instead of your disposable ballpoint pen would be a great place to start, something like that. So I just have to say this was a great session for me, my first session. It was amazing.
It was amazing for us to have you here, Bhuvana. I was delighted when you said you will be part of this session. So keep the conversation going. Take this message across to your class, to your friends, to your peers, and let us know how it goes. Raj, please.
Yes, ma'am. So I truly felt that this was in line with the motto that Ahmedabad University believes in, truly interdisciplinary. Like, we had such an interdisciplinary audience here, that people from very diverse background. I would also second Bhuvana that I also got to learn a lot of things here from very experienced and seasoned people in their own areas. And yes, ma'am. So adding on, I also feel that here it was very engaging and helpful, because here we not only thought of actions plan, but adding accountability to those things. So it was a great session for me as well.
Thanks so much, Raj, and keep the good work going. And on the entrepreneurship question, I look forward to hearing if you get into some interesting work in the future. Last but not the least, Bijal, please.
Firstly, thank you for having me here, and so many interesting conversations. I've been taking copious notes with my ink pen as we went. I just want to end by saying that, I strongly believe in something, especially when it comes to children. We protect what we love. And I've recently come across this term. It's called shifting baseline syndrome, where over time knowledge is lost about the state of the natural world. And basically, as children grow up, they are forgetting, they take built environments as granted as part of the natural world. So I feel what we need to go do is essentially go back and get children to fall in love with this world, because it's beautiful. And I always go back to what Rachel Carson, who is one of my heroes, says, that, you know, every child is born with that inherent sense of wonder. All she needs is that one adult, one book, that one film, that one class teacher to make sure that sense of wonder is fostered. Do that, and I can tell you we'll be raising a generation of climate defenders and not climate warriors. So thank you
so much, Bijal. I can never put it better than you, so I won't even try. But I hope someday I'm successful. I mean, as a mother, but as a teacher and as a climate scientist in taking this message across. But yeah, just on the hour, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and sharing your thoughts. And we look forward to more such conversation. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.